Welcome. We are here in the Lancaster newspaper's offices with Mayor Rick Gray. Mayor Gray won a third term yesterday with a significant vote. We've asked readers to send us questions, and we're going to be asking Mayor Gray to respond to those questions and tell us what he's going to be doing in the next 4 years. In addition to the readers' questions, we also have a few questions that were brought to us by the staff. And I'd like to start off with a softball for you. Mayor Gray, for the first time, could you tell us, early this year you said you were running to complete unfinished work. Can you tell us what projects and what work you'd like to complete in the next 4 years?
Well, you know, you'll never be done with the job of mayor. There'll always be something that is in a beginning stage or a middle stage, but the things I'm specifically referring to is to get the green infrastructure program underway to an extent that it's stable and financially stable and is operating in a way that will keep the feds off our back and also deal with an important problem. The new city reinvestment improvement zones, if we're lucky enough to be designated one of those cities, it'll mean a large amount of economic development money, probably 2-3 years from now. The applications have to be filed by the end of the month, by the end of November. So we're in the process of preparing an application and trying to get certified this year. That will be really a work in progress and an implementation over the next 4 years. It'll be a couple of years before we get anything out of it if we are designated. That's another one. I'd like to continue to modernize our police practices and what we're doing with the police, updating things, staying on the cutting edge of policing. And finally, finances. We do still have a $12 million fund balance that's there. We had a $2 million surplus last year. Would really like to stabilize the finances, and I think that's going to require some reform on the state level. They're going to have to, at some point, give us other options other than continuing to beat up on property owners. So those are just some of the things that are in the works and would like to continue with them.
All right. And Mayor Gray, along with yourself, also re-elected yesterday were City Council President Louise Williams, Council Member Tim Roschel, and Democrats Deneen Sirachi, I always get that wrong, and Pete Soto. That means Lancaster City will have an all-Democratic City Council for at least 10 years. In this campaign, less in this campaign than previous campaigns, but in the previous campaigns, your opponent has raised I guess opponent as of yesterday, had raised that the City Council has acted as a rubber stamp for you. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about how you see your role going forward working with an all-Democratic council.
Well, the difference between my former opponent and myself is that I respect City Council and I respect their role. They respect me and respect the role of mayor and what the mayor is to do and not to do. That said, generally what we do, I meet on a regular basis with the president of City Council at least a couple of times a month just to talk about agendas, where we're going, what ideas we have. A lot of the things that we propose initially come from City Council as ideas from City Council. As bones, sort of, myself and the city solicitor sort of put meat in the bones. Go back to committee hearings. You've been to committee hearings. I mean, there's discussion there. Sometimes I'll have an idea that we'll present to City Council and we'll take it back and tweak it a little bit. But there's a good working relationship. If you recall what City Council was like before I was mayor, if someone would present a proposal, an administrative official would be called up to explain what it was, be it Charlotte Katzenmoyer or Chuck Manville. They'd come up and say, or Carol Rowland, this is what we're going to do and this is what this means. You don't see that with City Council anymore. Now the chair of the committee that's reviewed the proposal, states what it is, answers questions on it, and is actually informed prior to the meeting. So, you know, this rubber stamp thing, if you look at probably 99% of the votes when the previous mayor was in office, they were unanimous. So to say it's a rubber stamp ignores everything that's done coming up to the point of actually taking the vote. So, you know, all I can say is we work together. I talked to other mayors from around central Pennsylvania, some of which have all Democratic city councils, and the council meetings are circuses, really. I mean, they're just people going off and going in all different directions, not addressing the issue at hand. We have a city council that's disciplined, that understands what issues are being discussed and delves into them. So, you know, if somebody wants to call it a rubber stamp, I'd suggest they come to some meetings before they do that. What they want is a circus. What we have is a council.
And one of our readers had posed a question regarding city government. The reader asks, you talk about wanting what's good for Lancaster. Is it true you work for a dollar like New York Mayor Bloomberg? And if not, why not? And of course, I'm familiar with your salary, that you had locked your salary. And I wanted to ask you, does it remain locked in next year's budget at 77?
It can't be changed. I have not asked for any salary increase, and in fact, my predecessor had a 3% salary increase built into the salary of the mayor. I took that, I think, 2 years and then stopped that, even though I was entitled to it under the law. Maybe 3 years. Since that time, since I've been in office, I've asked for no increase. That includes for this term. Now, to set this mayor's salary, it had to be set earlier this year. It cannot be changed for the next 4 years until a new mayor is elected. You can't get in office. We're not the General Assembly. You can't get in office and raise your salary. So, you know, I haven't asked for any increase. I don't take $1 a year because I need the money. And I'm not Michael Bloomberg. If I was Michael Bloomberg, I wouldn't take $1 a year. That said, the amount that the mayor makes, I used to say every lieutenant in the police department makes more money than the mayor. My guess is every sergeant in the police department right now makes more money than the mayor. I think I make around $76,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I got 77,932.
Like, yeah, 77.9. So I don't think I'm in the top 50 paid employees of the city. I think it's reasonable. I don't think you want the salary of the mayor to be so high that people seek the office because of the salary. I would hope that they would have other motivations. So.
Okay. And there was also another question that was raised that referenced New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm.
And a reader had asked about the contribution your campaign received from Mayor Bloomberg, and if you can talk about that, and also about your position with Bloomberg's Mayors Against Illegal Guns,
Sure.
and whether that played a role in the election.
Well, first of all, as to whether my position on the use and possession of illegal guns or the use of guns illegally, whether that played a role in the election, I really don't care. I think that's an important position that people on the local level have to take, and that is do everything we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people that would use them illegally, and inconvenience people who would use them legally as little as possible. So in other words, people that want them for self-defense, that want them for target shooting, skeet shooting, for hunting, you know, we should do it. We should make it as easy for them as possible to get them, and we should make them as difficult as possible for people who would use them illegally. That's what most of our measures are aimed at, and I'd be in favor of that whether it hurt me or helped me politically. I really don't care. As to the contribution from Mayor Bloomberg, It was a personal check, and there was no letter or anything. I sent him a note saying thank you. I've met him a few times at U.S. Conference of Mayors things, and also at Mayors Against Illegal Guns conferences that we had in Washington. I never asked him for any money. It didn't come with any conditions. I'm proud of the role that I play in Mayors Against Illegal Guns. I'm the state chair of it. There are over 200 mayors in Pennsylvania that have signed on to it. So, you know.
And how much was that contribution for?
It was $5,000. Yeah. It came as a shock to me.
And your campaign raised, what, some 70,000?
I'm not really sure what. I would guess more than that at this point. I would guess, I really don't know. I haven't seen the latest thing, and it's coming and going all the time, so it's difficult. We raised a substantial amount, that's for sure.
And your opponent in the election had campaigned on a platform of public safety, and he'd saying that he had planned to, or he'd be elected, planned to increase the number of firefighters and police officers.
And reduce taxes.
And reduce taxes.
Yeah.
And this morning...
And pull a rabbit out of the hat, too.
And we received a question this morning regarding public safety. Actually, a few. The first one comes from one of your neighbors who writes, I live and work in the city. I actually live in the same block as our mayor. Last month, on my way home from work at 7 p.m., I was mugged only yards from my front door and beaten quite badly. Thinking about it, I don't recall seeing any of the City Alliance's red shirt bicycle ambassadors around, or even a regular police officer beating the street. What can be done so I feel safe in my city again?
Well, I'm aware of that incident that happened right within yards of a Community Safety Coalition camera. I don't know if they've got anything off of it or not. As far as the public safety ambassadors and beat officers, that's the did area. We pay additional taxes. I pay $300-400 additional in taxes a year to live in the downtown investment district. That pays for the ambassadors, the red-shirted guys on the bicycles. Maybe he didn't see any of that night. I see them all the time, all around. In fact, already I've been in my garage at night and heard somebody say, is everything all right? And looked up, and there's one of these guys on from James Street Improvement there. You know, it's unfortunate. There's crime. Robberies are down in Lancaster. But things like this happen. They happen in Lancaster. They happen in Holtwood. That people are robbed. Homes are broken into. Things like that happen. It's unfortunate. Can you ever feel always safe where you are? Well, I'll say this. You're safer in the city of Lancaster than you are anyplace else in Lancaster County. Be in a very rural area of Lancaster County and be assaulted and call the police and see how long it takes. Our police pride themselves on response time. The chief keeps very detailed records as to response time, how long it takes to get to an emergency situation. Again, they're graded, I think, on a 7-point scale. But if it's a 7, if it's a shooting or an officer in trouble or something like that, the response time is 3 minutes, 2-3 minutes. The city is relatively small. By the way, I reviewed with the chief my opponent's claim that only 4 police officers were on duty at night, and was advised by the chief there's more lieutenants and sergeants on duty at night than 4. But just the command is more than that. But you know, crime happens. Unfortunately, it's happened since the beginning of time, and all we can do is our best to keep it from happening, and if it does happen, do our best to apprehend the wrongdoer and keep them from doing it again. That's about the best I can say. It's part of life.
And a follow-up to that, you said that there are more command officers on. How many rank and file patrol officers are on typically on a weekday night?
You I really couldn't. I don't know the exact number of that. It's well over a dozen, I know that. So, but I'm not really sure the exact figure.
The next question is also regarding public safety. A suburban firefighter asks, are you going to work with staffing issues with the city fire department and ensure there are no layoffs?
Well, there aren't going to be any layoffs. I can tell you that right now. We're at the level of firefighters that management partners recommended. We have 5 new firefighters in the academy right now, and I don't see any on the horizon. I don't see any layoffs at all. Unless something happened that we just didn't anticipate financially. So I don't see us reducing the fire department at all. What we're doing is trying to work with the union, and the president of the union and I meet. That's the two of us once a month or once every other month, and just talk off the record about things we can do to get more people on duty. We've come down with an agreement that was used last summer and up until I think the end of last month, that up to a certain number of hours, firefighters don't have to be paid time and a half under federal law. And the firefighters union agreed during the summertime, when we have all these guys on vacation and whatnot, and it's hard-filling shifts, that they would take straight time up until the maximum under federal law. So we've been able to staff at 13, 14 guys on duty, which is really where we'd like to be. I told the firefighters union, I addressed them during the campaign, and I told them I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think the 24-hour, 48-hour schedule, which is used by most professional fire departments in the United States, is the way to go. We could have scheduled over 20 people on duty if we had 3 platoons, which that would be, instead of 4 platoons, which we have now. What we have now, we might have 16 or 17 people scheduled on duty. 2 of them are sick, 3 of them have vacation, 1 of them takes a personal day, and the next thing you know, you're down to 10 guys on duty. If you bring people in, you're bringing them in on overtime, and it gets really expensive very fast. If we had a 3 platoon system with 24-hour on, 48 hours off, firefighters would work probably 90 days a year that actually have to go to work for a 24-hour shift. But we would have plenty of firefighters on duty, so that somebody that's sick, on vacation and whatnot, would still have a complete complement of people. So I told them I was going to, they asked me about it, and I said I'm not going to change my opinion. I think it's the way to go. They aren't buying it right now, but we'll continue to talk and see.
And that was a recommendation that was made in the management partner study. Can you briefly, for people that are viewing this and unfamiliar with the management partner study, can you briefly say what that is?
Yeah, the early intervention program, and it always sounds like a drug treatment program when you say you're in early intervention, but the governor's office has an early intervention program where municipalities are having financial difficulties or foreseeable financial difficulties before they got into a Harrisburg situation. And one of the things they would do to allow you to hire an outside firm and come in, and that firm would do a complete operational audit. They look at everything. And ours was, I think they had 120 or 30 recommendations, might have been 160 recommendations. They came in, and it was a group of professionals in all different fields, and wrote a pretty complete report. It's probably 6-7 years ago now. We've taken that report and implemented almost everything that we can implement. Some of the things we couldn't implement because state law wouldn't permit us to implement them, and other things we couldn't implement because our bargaining units wouldn't agree to them. 24-hour, 48-hour schedule is one of those things. It's been a great help to us. I know I was criticized for creating all these new positions in City Hall. Well, that's based on the assumption that the old positions didn't go away. You'll probably see 30 new titles in City Hall, but a lot of that was implementation and management partners. I'll give you an example. There used to be a director of neighborhood matters and also a director of economic development. Well, now there's a director of economic development and neighborhood improvement. So those two jobs became one. Well, the way the count would go, that was a new position. Yeah, it was a new position, but it got rid of two old ones. We have less people employed in City Hall now than we did when I first got in office. And, you know, it's not a skeleton crew. I think we have enough people. But they have different assignments. Additionally, what we do now, it was never done before, we do actual written evaluations of all the people who are non-bargaining, all the management people. They do written evaluations, and if you get a salary increase each year, it's 1%. But then there is funds that can be used that if you do well on your evaluation, you can get another 2 or 3% in addition, but you get that for that year. Your salary, if your salary is $100, it'll be $101 this year, but you might get $4 more because of a very positive evaluation, or you might get nothing, which sort of indicates what we think of the job you're doing. So it's more like what you would find in the private sector. We proposed that to AFSCME. We're in negotiating with AFSCME right now. From what I understand, they didn't want any part of it. So right now, in the bargaining positions, if you give 3% to one guy, everybody gets 3%, no matter what their performance is, even though this guy might be absolutely outstanding and this guy might be very mediocre, they both get the same salary, which is not the world I knew in the private sector.
Yeah, the next reader question is regarding living with disabilities. The reader writes, what are plans to improve the quality of life and living for those in the disability community, especially those with ongoing needs who need care 24/7?
Well, of course, we're working to try to comply completely with the American Disability Act with mobility around town. There's a problem with an older community like ours. Most of the public buildings were built long before there was an American Disability Act, so they aren't accessible, or it's difficult making them accessible. One of the reasons we're putting the addition on to City Hall, one is to get everybody together so you can manage them and see what's going on and see who's showing up and who isn't, rather than being at diverse sites. But also, I had a group of 6th graders come in when I first got in office, and they buzzed me, and I said, well, send them up to the mayor's conference room. And they said, we can't. 2 of them are on wheelchairs. Well, City Hall should be accessible. I mean, people should be able to get to the mayor's office. So I had an engineering firm come in and do a study of what it would cost us. One, to bring City Hall up to code. There are no smoke alarms in City Hall. You won't see sprinkler systems in the current City Hall. I mean, if it was a private building, would be up in arms about it. So to bring it up to code, plus to make it accessible, they estimated it would cost around $4.5 million to do that, because you'd have to build an elevator tower. The bathrooms on the 2nd floor have steps into them. It's not just that the doors are narrow. You have to step up to get into the bathroom. So when we floated some bonds, we floated $4.5 million with the idea in mind that we were going to make City Hall accessible and also make sure that it was code compliant. After we did that, myself and Governor Rendell were talking, and out of those talks I had an architect draw up a City Hall annex with an elevator in between, with the new air conditioning and heating units incorporated and brought in, with the stuff that we would have to do to City Hall. And the governor suggested an RCAP, which is a $5 million grant. If we would match it, well, we had $4.5 million just to fix up one building. So for another $500,000, we could build an additional building and accomplish all the things we wanted to accomplish in the current City Hall. So that's what's going on right now. We're trying to make it accessible for everybody. City Council will be there and probably will sell Southern Market. There's already been some interest expressed by different individuals in purchasing and businesses in purchasing Southern Market. That said, past the accessibility, I'm not really sure there is a role for city government in providing services to people with severe disabilities. We don't provide social services. That's not what local government does in Pennsylvania, at least. We provide safety, police, fire, water, sewer, streets. We provide just the basics. We'll certainly cooperate with any other level of government or any private entity that wants to provide services like that. And we're certainly willing to hear suggestions from people how we can make it easier for somebody with disabilities to get around in the city and to function in the city. But past that, other than some housing, usually if we do affordable housing, there's some units that are just set aside specifically for people with disabilities.
The next question comes from a reader who says, there is no traffic control devices on East Chestnut Street between Lime and Plum. The 2-block strip along Lesser Park is a drag strip for cars. The intersection North Shippen and East Chestnut Street has at least 5 accidents per year, some of them quite spectacular. And at least one child is struck there every year trying to get to the playground. The reader continues that they don't believe the traffic light or speed bumps would be a viable solution, but asks if it's possible to install painted crosswalks there, or whether or not you had any other ideas for traffic calming at that intersection.
Well, painted crosswalks sometimes encourage a false sense of security, that people think that because it's a crosswalk they can get out in it, and actually might be putting themselves in more danger, because some of the crosswalks with the signs, in some areas they're obeyed, in other areas you're taking your chances getting out there. I would say this: if there's been that many accidents, if there's been 5 reportable accidents in a 12-month period, we're authorized to put in a 4-way stop sign. And it's a lot cheaper to put in 4-way stop signs than it is traffic lights. Traffic lights, $200,000-300,000 and up an intersection to put in traffic lights. 4-way stop signs, if there's been as many accidents as that reader indicates, they really ought to come before the Traffic Commission, ask for a study to be done to put in a 4-way stop. That one. 2, why is there a drag strip? Well, there's a drag strip because 2 cars are side by side, or some jerk wants to get ahead of you so he can get the red light first at the next intersection. 1-way streets encourage speeding. They encourage it. There's been psychological studies done that the broader the lane, the more open it is, the faster people will go naturally. It's not that even bad people. You'll just go faster because you feel more comfortable in doing it. A lot of our 2-way streets, or 1-way streets, should be 2 ways. They should be. Chestnut's a perfect example. Chestnut Street would be quaint and quiet if it was 2 ways instead of a drag strip, because there's nobody to pass, there's nobody to race, there's the guy in front of you and the guy behind you. So I'd suggest that we're looking very strongly right now at Mulberry Street, changing that into 2 ways. And I'd like to see it happen in more of our streets. The reason they're 1 way is a program that was done by the federal and state government in the late 60s called the Topics Program, which I don't have any idea what it stands for. But the idea was to get traffic through the city faster. And it was done all over the country. Get it through faster. Well, that's what you got.
Well, Chestnut Street is a state street, I believe. So
Yeah.
Is it possible for the City Traffic Commission to turn that into a 2-way street again?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'd certainly be willing to take a look at it if people on Chestnut Street would indicate that they would want to do it. If you go to, I'll use an example, Old Town Alexandria. Now the main street through there has traffic lights. You get off the main street, every intersection's a four-way stop. Every intersection. Go to San Francisco. Every intersection, darn near, if it doesn't have a traffic light, has a stop sign. It discourages that kind of driving. It does. And two-way streets. So I don't know. That's a good question, Bernie. I'm not really sure what would have to do with the state to get it back to two ways. Come to think of it, you're wrong. Chestnut Street is not a state street.
It's not a state street.
Now that we took it back years ago, I forget who did it. It might have been Art Morris, but we took it back. That's our street, unfortunately.
And the next two questions come from the Intel editorial page editor, Earl Cornelius. And Earl asks, in your victory speech, you cited the role that young people played in the campaign. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I don't know if you saw behind the bow tie thing, a website. We gave them the space when we saw what they were doing, but it was just some young people in their 20s that were really into social media and whatnot and wanted to get their people involved in the campaign. I went to a Capitol Day party up on Cabbage Hill where there were probably, I would say, at least 50 people. That the oldest, other than myself and Gail, was probably 30. And they had a bottle of champagne, and on Capitol Day, passed it around, and before you took a hit on the bottle of champagne, you had to say why you loved the city of Lancaster. And it really gave me a really good feeling that they're coming back into the city. They want to be in the city, and there were 50 different reasons. Then they passed it around a second time, and you weren't allowed to repeat. They really have an affinity, younger people, with the city. They love the city, they love urban life, and Lancaster is Philadelphia without all the hassle, really. I mean, you have it here. So they wanted to get involved, and if you looked at the crowd last night at Democratic headquarters, there were an awful lot of people there who had never been there before. There were people there who were never involved in the campaign before. The people that did behind the bow tie, some of them weren't even registered when they started the whole thing. So it's gratifying to see that people are that interested in their local community, especially younger people, because that's we've got to build from. Same with the Latinos. A lot of young Latinos were involved in things, and young African Americans. It was across the board. So it's a good sign. It bodes well for the future that that group of people sees their future in this city. So it was just very gratifying to see it. It was. And they wanted to get involved, and they did get involved in their own way. I mean, I'm not a Facebook, Twitter kind of guy. These people all are. I'm an email. That's about it.
Earl's second question, he said that you said in the past that running against Charlie Smithgall was not, quote, personal, unquote. Yet in debates it seemed to be more personal than in the past. Tuesday, Smithgall said he wouldn't concede to someone he didn't respect. Has this gotten personal?
Well, the fact that he would say that he doesn't respect me, I think I'd have to take that personally. If I said I didn't respect you, would you take that personally? The problem with the campaign, and I'll tell you what I took personally, was that I felt that Mr. Smithgall was really just running down the city. I don't mind running me down, and I don't mind derogatory things about me. I used to be a criminal defense lawyer. People have called me everything. And that I can take, but when you broadcast to all of central Pennsylvania that Lancaster is so dangerous, while we're doing everything we can to encourage people to come into the city, to live in the city, to have dinner in the city, to enjoy the city, to, relish what we have here, and you're sending a message out to everybody that Lancaster is more dangerous than it's ever been, which is not factual. You're playing off stereotypes, and it hurts the city. That I take personally as mayor. I take personally because I hear it from suburbanites, and I hear it from people that live in rural sections of the county. Oh, I've never been in the city in 20 years. It's too dangerous. And I tell them, well, I've never been in East Earl for 20 years either. To play off those kind of stereotypes does damage to the city. That, as mayor, I really object to, and I object to it when I hear it out when I'm speaking to groups outside the city or inside the city. So, is it personal? He doesn't like me, I don't like him, so, it's not a big deal. A lot of people don't like me.
And last question. When you complete this upcoming term, you'll be 73. Any chance you'll seek a fourth term?
You mean if I complete the upcoming term?
Yes, it was presumptuous.
Well, is there a chance? Sure. Sure there's a chance. Is it much of a chance? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, Mr. Smithgold said 2 years ago he would never run for public office again. And he just ran for mayor. So everything's subject to change. I had to get my wife's permission this time to do it, and I'm not sure that she would be as forthcoming for another term, really. I was on the vestry of my church. I gave time to the church. I was chairman of the board of the American Motorcyclists Association. I gave time to my avocation. I was president of the Bar Association. I gave time to my profession. I've given time to the city, being mayor. I missed an awful lot of stuff my kids did while I grew up, because being a trial lawyer, you worked a lot of nights and you didn't control your schedule. I'm now in the process of missing what my grandkids are doing as they grow up. So, I'm not sure I haven't done my part, really. I love the city. I love the job of being mayor. I love where we're going with stuff. The people we have working for me are the real reason for any change in this city. The Charlotte Katzenmores, the Pat Hopkins, the Pat Brogans, Randy Patterson, both our chiefs. They're the people that are really doing the work. And not only that, being mayor and providing leadership, it's not like I have a lock on that. There's a lot of people that can do this. So, will I run for a fourth term? I don't know, but right now I'd say the probability is no.
Mayor, we appreciate you joining us, and for readers and our listeners or viewers, we appreciate you coming to Lancaster Online.